Hey, welcome to Filler. I'm Joe.
And I'm Steve.
And this is the place where we talk about things that we love that fill our cup as creatives and as people. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing surprisingly well for revisiting Blink-182.
That is... honestly, I really wish that I can get Dashboard Confessionals Vindicated to play right here. I might see if I could pop it in and not pay them if I do it for five seconds.
I think if it's under 10, it falls under fair use.
Oh yeah. We might have to play around with some sound design this episode. Impress Colin McClutchy. But that's good to hear. I'm glad that you're looking forward to doing this.
I texted you yesterday, pretty much right when I woke up. I was like, after doing 6 episodes of Bruce Springsteen and knowing we were doing Blink again, I could feel my metaphorical hat turning backwards.
Yeah.
And the reason that came to me was I woke up and I had I Miss You stuck in my head.
Okay.
And I'm so mad because...
You're mad that you had it stuck in your head because it's a beautiful song?
No, because I still don't like it. And I had to I had to listen to it to get it out of my head. But the reason it keeps getting stuck in my head is because there was this stupid Instagram reel of them doing AI Tom DeLonge voice singing I Miss You, but about the SpongeBob episode where he rips his pants.
Yes, I saw that.
So that's what comes to my head first instead now. It's like Gula Goon.
That's so good. Man, I know that you and I have talked about this off air, that we both are not fans of AI. Mm-hmm. However, I'm putting on a caveat here right now because I've talked to Andrew of Burnover District about this a lot. Mm-hmm. We think there is a space for stupid memes and brain rot from AI if someone puts it in there, and us as the intaker of the AI, we're like, this is so dumb, but it made me laugh and entertained me.
Yeah, I could sacrifice some drinkable water for that.
See, and that's the only part where it's not cool. If it was totally ecologically friendly, yeah, go for it. But it's not worth the lulls.
Yeah.
Speaking of the lulls, we're going to have, I think, a good amount of laughter on this one after reading Mark Hoppus's memoir, Fahrenheit 182. I think you pitched it, but you pre-pitched it doing this episode.
Yeah, because as soon as we finished doing the Blink miniseries, which we recorded all 3 episodes in one day, maybe 2 days later, Mark and Dan Ozzi, the co-writer, announced the book and a book tour for it. And we're like, well, fuck, we have to. We have to go. And we went with your partner and her sister, and it was an amazing event. It was at, oh my God, what's the place called? The Brooklyn Paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a great venue. The show itself, because it wasn't really just a book talk where he and Dan Ozzi talk and ask questions. It was this rehearsed thing with a slideshow and sound effects, and it was giving away probably a third of the book, and
it was a good
almost
amount.
All the best stories were in that event. But it included a copy of the book, and it had this cute little drawing of Mark on a bookmark. And that was a great event, and I went home and read half of it right away.
I picked it up when I got home, and I tried not to devour it too quickly because it did feel very similar to what we had just seen, which I really respected them doing now in retrospect, having finished the book, because they might have given away some of the big stories, but that means to them what stayed in the book might be more meaningful and might actually be the bigger stuff, which I kind of agree with. So I think they took an awesome swing by making this kind of live podcast book event sort of thing that they did, / stand-up routine from Mark, kind of, with Dan being the side man, kind of like Conan and
Andy Richter.
And Andy Richter. Exactly. That's what it felt like sometimes, in the best way too. But yeah, so we are going to treat this kind of like a, how did I say it to you? Like a where are they now?
Yes, that's right.
For Blink-182, just based on Mark's memoir. And the way we're going to break this down is into 3 chapters. So first, we're going to look at the personal of Mark. So kind of like his biography and background there, and personal relationships. Then we'll look at the professional. So that's the Blink-182 meat of everything. He would love that joke. And then we'll finish off with some kind of like non sequitur side note tangent things that were just off the cuff reactions that we read that we thought were pertinent and wanted to share and dive into.
And I don't think we'll spoil too many things that
Yeah.
we think you should read for yourself, like about how he helped the U.S. catch Saddam Hussein, or
Yeah, he
or
can
all
he
the
can go
stuff
into
about
that.
cancer. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty heavy, and I think one of the great things about going through this as musicians ourselves is seeing where we connect with it, and especially after having done the mini series where we listen to all their songs. Now we can see what we got right in our interpretations of the music versus seeing the actual stories of making them. And let me just say right up front, there's a lot of stuff that I have to apologize for.
Oh yeah. This is gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. All right. So we're gonna go chronologically through our respective sections. So our first one that we were talking about today is about Mark's parents' divorce. That was in 3rd grade, I think. Right? What a great fun way to start it off. But Mark kind of starts off the book with this. So this is we talked about this a lot on the original podcast or the original miniseries about the music itself. That Mark's parents were a big factor and support system for him, but his dad was also kind of a big obstacle and didn't really believe in his talent as a musician and really wanted him to have like the safety net of a plan B there.
Yeah.
Whereas his mom was more of the cheerleader and was just like, you want to go do it? Go do it. But what I think stands out to Mark, because it didn't sound like he was all that resentful about his dad not believing in him in the book, was their divorce.
Yeah.
Right? So what did you think about that?
Well, the first thing that stood out was him, like when he really starts talking about the divorce, like where it all starts to go wrong when he's like 8 years old, is that he describes a fight that he overheard his parents having. And he's a kid listening, and he spills a cup of apple juice, and they hear it and come out and talk to him. And that stood out to me because I was like, oh, that's the apple juice line in Adam's song.
Yeah.
So like that whole song about his parents' divorce is like pretty directly about it, you know?
Yeah. Which was really nice to hear. I guess nice is the wrong word, but it's really cathartic maybe, or emotionally validating, or I can't place the right word for myself right now. I am happy to hear that there was such a moment of seriousness on Enema as Adam's song, and it was genuinely meaningful and real and true. It's not like it was just like a made up story song, which can be meaningful and true and emotional in its own right, but really Mark putting it on the paper and kind of saying like, this is my most personal song yet, which he does get more personal later on. I love that. I thought that was great. And it actually gave me a better appreciation for Adam's song, which I was previously lukewarm on.
Yeah, there's quite a few moments like that, that he talks about a lot of the stories behind these songs. And there's something about that apple juice that like clearly it affected him, and it's a good image.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of grounds the whole thing.
Yeah, he's really good at doing that. He's really good at it. It's something that Jimmy Eat World does as well, where they take very specific details, and that makes it feel so real, so that the emotion they're trying to convey feels extremely universal.
Oh, did you like that he brought up how for like an entire van tour, all they listened to was Static Prevails?
I did. I loved it so much. They worked with Mark Trombino. It made me feel so good reading this. I felt like my personality was validated just between him and their Jimmy Eat World connection. Aside from that Adam song, Apple Juice lyric, he also did that several more times throughout the book. He would sneak in these lyrics. I remember the plus 44 chapter. He goes, it was the end of a sad, dark, lonely year. And I was like, that's straight off the album. And I love that he was ripping his own lyrics and putting them in the memoir, because I could feel him sitting there typing it and be like, these bitches are gonna eat this up. Like these little
And
Easter eggs.
it also, yeah, it grounds us to connect the dots like chronologically, because we
Yeah.
literally just did this of going through their whole story, and now we have the book to support it. It's like we're doing the Springsteen thing in reverse, because I
Yeah.
went through his book again as we went through the albums, and now we're just kind of retroactively applying it, and that's also making me like a lot of the music more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Did you want to talk about the skateboarding?
A little bit. He said something interesting about how he liked internal sports and hated competitive ones. He didn't like, being on a team and competing against somebody. He liked the zen nature of skateboarding, and he made so many friendships and got into so much like underground culture through that. And this is going to sound kind of bougie, but I was the same way with skiing. I've never been a sports person. I have to find something enjoyable or exciting that I can only compete with myself, only like try to get better than myself, and feels adventurous to be athletic. I like rock climbing. I want to start doing that. Like, I always loved like jungle gyms and like going on hikes in the woods where I was like pretending I was on like a Pokemon adventure or something as a
Yeah.
kid, something that could get my imagination going. And
Mhm.
skiing was a big thing like that for me. It was something I shared with my dad. And so while I've never been a skateboarder, I get it. But you were a skateboarder as a kid.
I was a skateboarder, and I definitely wasn't a really good one. I think I landed one kickflip throughout my entire life. And I was like, I can actually retire from skateboarding now that I've landed the kickflip. But I think I'm the same way as both of you. I'm not a big competitive person. Like I'll trash talk people, but I won't really trash talk teams. And like my stuff is always in jest and like to mess around and be silly. But skateboarding wasn't really the thing for me. I just was a skateboarder. However, I definitely compete with myself for everything. I think about this with like songwriting and story writing. I think about it with doing yoga. Now that I've started, I'm finding that I'm not as good at yoga as I thought I was 4 weeks ago. But that's because I'm doing the poses better and correctly now.
Yes, you're getting good enough to recognize what needs improvement.
Exactly. And that's making me realize that like while I loved yoga when I started it in April, I was doing the pose wrong. And I was like, this feels great. I'm getting a great workout and I'm not dying. And now I'm dying. And I actually love it more that I'm dying. That I have to sit down. I'm like, this is too hot. I should have hydrated better. Or that pose is way too hard. Or like, oh wow, like my knee joint, I can't get my knee straight. How can I get my knee straight so that I can land that pose? But I'm not competing with anyone for it. It's just let me get it better so I can be better and feel better and do better for myself. So I really like that about all three of us, because I think that shows the creative element there is that we just want to be better because we have this intrinsic desire to be better,
And it makes sense because Mark brings up his friendly competition with Tom in how they write songs, because they're always trying to one up each other and like steal the spotlight from each other, but in a fun way, where they're just like grabbing dicks and like pantsing each other, but also pushing themselves creatively by having someone to compete with in a friendly way. And that, I don't know, that sounds so beautiful the way he talks.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, it's fantastic because they're competing with one another, but they're in the same band. So whoever is better just lifts the whole thing up.
Yes.
So it doesn't even really matter who quote unquote wins when it comes down to it, because who really wins is Blink-182, which is both of them and Travis,
Right. Jumping ahead like 30 chapters.
Yeah. This is way past his childhood as a skateboarder. Something that I think he struggled with that really resonated with me. It's interesting because he doesn't really talk about his personal competition when it comes to parenthood. Whereas like I feel like people who have parental issues, like mommy and daddy issues and whatnot, when they want to be parents, they often say to themselves, I'm going to be a better father than my father was, or I'm going to be a better mother than my mother was, or whatever. I really love that despite his internal competition with himself, he doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Instead, what he does have is what I related to, which is extreme and utter anxiety about becoming a father.
Yeah.
And it's coming from a place of love. And so, granted, I don't have kids, but I have dogs. But the chapter with him, with his son being born, with Jack being born, and he's hitting Jack on the back a little too hard to get him to cough or burp, and the nurse says, "You gotta be a little more lighter." Right away, Mark writes about giving Jack shaken baby syndrome and how he's like, "How am I going to do this? I can't do this, and how am I going to bring this thing home and feed it?" He goes, "I'm driving away with this kid. You guys know I'm the naked guy from MTV, right? Nothing. You're just going to let this happen. You're going to let me drive away." And it made me think about adopting Franklin, like so long ago, where I'm like, "Oh, I'm this 23-year-old kid, but you're giving me this little dog to take care of." Like, granted, again, not human, but I got to feed him. I got to make sure he's alive. I got to take him to the vet and the doctor and like learn how to communicate with him and learn his language and whatnot.
Because he's a baby forever. He's a
Exactly.
nonverbal toddler forever.
Right. So I really loved getting that chapter because I felt validated as a dog parent.
Yeah.
You know, did you get any of that with you and Kimchi?
Kinda. So Al really takes the lead as the parent, and like was more ready than I was when we got Kimchi. So I kind of followed her lead, and Kimchi took to her right away and is very much like, imprinted on her, and I'm like the other human. but no, I could see like it kind of validated, or getting Kimchi kind of validated my feelings of never wanting human kids, because I was like, this is enough. Like, I love her, and she fills something in my heart that I never even knew I needed, but I could not imagine her growing up and driving a car and going to college and stuff. I couldn't deal with all that. And part of what makes me feel good about having her is giving her a home, because she's a rescue.
Right.
So if I were to ever change my mind about having kids, it would be to adopt, to give a kid that needs a home.
Right.
One. Because I couldn't see, my personal feelings is I couldn't see bringing a new life into a world as fucked up as ours, but that's just my own view. I don't judge anybody for wanting that. They clearly just feel something different than I do, that I'm just missing that feeling, and to each their own. But I definitely get the anxiety part too, because like there was one time Kimchi was just like scratching her eye the whole time we were trying to watch The Sixth Sense, and it was Al's first time seeing it.
Okay.
And I was just like, can you just stop so she can get to the twist, and then we'll and then I'll take you to the vet, please. And then we took her to an emergency vet, and she was completely fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, that's what parenthood, even for an animal, is, just worrying about things more than you need to.
Right. But that means that you're loving parents, especially because she can't communicate that with you, but you're willing to go out and do the most for her, that it's ultimately relieving, perhaps aside from our wallets. But ultimately, it's relieving that your dog is okay and live another day to watch another twist with M. Night Shyamalan. Who
does appear in this book. Yeah.
In a little bit. We'll come back to M. Night Shyamalan a little later. Okay, so our last topic about the personal is kind of a bridge between his personal life and his professional life. And I think that's really because Blink started as a friends band.
Yeah.
Right. Like he met Tom because he had moved to California after leaving his dad's, and his sister introduced them, and they just immediately clicked. And because they immediately clicked, they started writing music. So I think despite Blink 182, the band being a professional unit for them, especially because it's a business and it makes a ton of money for them and other people, it is extremely personal. At the same time, there is a friendship level and a bandmate level, and those areas get crossed a lot.
Yeah, it comes up a lot in the book that even at earlier times, Mark is content to just play shows in backyards with friends at parties and stuff, and to be like a San Diego music scene staple. And he's cool with that because he's getting the most out of life he can imagine doing it because it's pure. And Tom is the ambitious one who really pushes for more and bigger. And I give Tom a lot of credit for that because, like Kurt Cobain before him, anyone who would have heard their band would never think they'd be huge pop stars. And to say we want to be the biggest band in the world sounds ridiculous. But he strove for it and brought Mark and Scott and then later Travis instead up by doing that. The problem is Tom DeLonge is also a fucking baby. Yeah. And, Mark's clearly anxious. He's talked about it in a lot of ways, especially with parenthood and his OCD starting with washing his hands and avoiding germs all the time. But you can see why things get to his head when Tom quits the first time.
Yeah.
He changes his number and goes off to make fucking We Don't Have to Whisper. I know there's two sides of every story, but he really did it in the most immature way twice. He did the same thing. He just cuts everybody out because he's pissy and thinks nobody gets him because his gift comes from Xanadu or whatever.
So this bothered me, and I would just like to clarify it's we don't need to whisper for everybody. And that's really caring about.
Is that what it's called?
It's called We Don't Need to Whisper. But I love that you got it wrong in a worse way because that shows really how you feel about it.
What did you call Lucky Town? Lucky Heart or whatever? What
Lucky Touch.
Lucky Touch. Yeah.
Lucky Touch. Yeah. No, that shows that we have the same feelings about those albums.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, I think we'll get a little bit more into this when we get to the Boxcar Racer chapter.
Yeah.
Because I do want to, there's a part of me that wants to give Tom grace, especially this time around. And we'll talk more about it when we talk about how Boxcar Racer came to be and how that affected Mark.
Yeah.
But I find it really I can't call him a baby for everything, but I think it was very disgusting that he changed his number and that he kind of just ghosted Mark because first and foremost, they're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Even when Mark talks about Scott Traynor and how he quit / was fired from the band, he gives the dude a lot of grace and is that's the last time I spoke to him. He was yelling at me. Months later, he called to chew me out some more, and I haven't heard from him since. Mm-hmm. He doesn't trash him. He's very, very empathetic about his alcoholism. And even when we saw him and Dan Ozzi at Brooklyn Paramount, he talked about this and he said, I haven't seen him since, and I really hope he's well. And you could hear that he was being genuine. So Mark cares about these people as people first, not as bandmates. And by changing his number and going off to make We Don't Need to Whisper, go make We Don't Need to Whisper. That's fine. That's okay. The changing his number part and really just ghosting Mark, I think that's the screwed up part of it for me.
See, I would forgive it if I thought the album was good, but no, it's shit. So whatever. and to be fair, Mark backs me up here. He says some of the songs are good. A lot of it was self-indulgent and droned on too long. And I was just I love you, Mark Hoppus.
Yeah, no, I love that he said that, especially in a book where he's good with Tom DeLonge again.
I know.
I think it's even better. Tom DeLonge gets an acknowledgement in the back and he's by the way, your album still sucks, bro. I thought that was great.
And also quick shout out to Mark's mom for being the absolute best support ever.
Yeah.
I mean, she let Scott stay at her house when they were starting the band. I think she bought Tom's first guitar for him, or first electric guitar or something.
Yeah, their parents took out a loan for his guitar.
That is...
Or for the album, something like that, yeah.
That's so amazing. And, I just love that because they didn't have a lot of money and there was a lot of hardship in all of their lives, the members of Blink, but you can still be punk and have cool parents that support you and love you. Yeah.
I think I agree with you. There was just one weird thing that happened in the book with his mom, and it wasn't because it wasn't his mom. It was him, and then like his mom's reaction. He was on a talk show, and his mom was there, and he's like, "My mom gives the best blowjobs," and she was laughing and yelling, and I was like, "Yo, like I'm glad she's mad chill with it, but bro, why would you make that joke? Like, why?
I know.
It was just
that
weird.
just has to be their relationship, but they know it's so outlandish it can't mean anything.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. That's a good way to put it. It's kind of like what he said when we were at the show, that she would leave like a Post-it or a sticker on the dish where it's like, Mark, wash the fucking dishes. And it's like, this is the mother talking to the son. But he was like, yeah, I should have washed the dishes. Like he understood the message behind the language, or, so yeah, I actually, that makes me reevaluate it. Their relationship's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we transition to the meat of our Blink burger?
Ew. Yes, let's do that.
All right. So they start a band. And this is
like chapter 7. Mark starts
really
a
early,
band
right?
as a kid. Yeah. I forget what they're called, like Pier 69 at first. And then Of All Things. And yeah, he said that it turned out being a bass player was the perfect instrument for a mediator like me. I gotta know what you think of that.
I think he's 100% right. I don't know if I don't remember how much he went into it.
He said that because he was used to being the messenger between his divorced parents and whatnot, he connected that to being the person in the band connecting the guitar to the drums. Being the bridge, the mediator. How does that connect with you?
That 100% resonates with me. Also suffering from broken home syndrome. But it's also, I don't think you need to have a broken home to be a good bassist. I think it just really, really helps you,
Speaking of which, go stream Mom v Dad, Dawn of Justice, featuring MJ and Miles Blue Spruce by the LVP.
We didn't plan that plug, but I love it. I 100% agree. I started on guitar first when I was a kid, and my buddy Tom got better at guitar way faster than me. And so that pissed me off because I wasn't competitive, but I was also like, why am I not good to the level that he is so quickly? Like, he ended up having like a Gibson Les Paul and a Marshall, and we were like 15. It was nuts.
Whoa.
And I remember in 6th grade when my dad got me a Yamaha like first act little kit with whatever their Strat is and like the little amp. And he was like, oh, I want you to like. He's like, I play guitar, I play bass. He's like, give it a try. And it was whatever small buy-in. So I appreciate him getting me started on that. But I tried playing music. I tried playing guitar at my elementary school. And in 6th grade, my music teacher, who later became my colleague, she doesn't remember this. And I told her about this. She's like, I would never say that now. And I was like, yeah, bro, that it was like the late 90s, early 2000s. So glad you wouldn't say it now, but you said it then and it traumatized me then. She said that my fingers were too short and fat to play guitar well, which, to be fair, to some extent, she's right, because I was playing classical.
Said thick, though.
She could have said thick, but she also could have said, like, instead of noting what the problem is, a lot of times, like, here's like a teacher thing, you don't have to note what the problem is. You could just offer an alternative solution. So she could have been like, hey, why don't you give a try on saxophone? Where you don't really have to worry about your fingers, but it's like challenging. Or she's like, I really need someone on glockenspiel. Why don't you go play that? Or like, here's the melody on recorder. Like anything. But by saying your fingers are too fat and too short, it's like, I can't even help that about my body. So I think that stuck with me and put a roadblock there for me. And that my buddy Tom just built bigger and bigger when he got better at guitar than I did. But that pushed me to jump to bass. Because then I was like, all right, you play guitar, I'll play bass, whatever. And then that is where I really got into it.
Thick-ass fingers will keep those heavier strings down.
Exactly. I was like, let me use these fat fingers to my advantage. And so when I moved back to Brooklyn and I started playing in bands, I was like, do I play bass? Do I play guitar? I definitely felt more comfortable on bass because I played in some stuff in high school. But I really did enjoy being that bridge between the rhythm section and the guitars, just because like, the singers and the guitarists honestly don't really talk to the drummers, like unless they're like, hey, I didn't like that beat, or can we do this, or can we start over? Like there's communication, but like it's not the communication that I think a rhythm section shares. And it's to the point where like I've played with drummers who I really, really click with, and like I've built like a strong camaraderie and chemistry with, that like I can communicate like via eyes or like a quick nudge, and the drummer will go, "Oh yeah, we're doing that," and then we hit it, and then that becomes a part of the song, and so there's a special sauce that happens there. So I agree with him 100%. That's how bass ended up becoming my favorite instrument to play, because it's just the best of both worlds. I think I play bass like a guitar, kind of.
Yeah.
Too. So like that, I think that helps that it's a little bit different, but it's also very rhythmic at the same time. Yeah, it's the bass is the best. I've also heard like several producers and friends of mine be like, I might play guitar, but bass is the instrument that I write on. And I'm always like, that's so interesting, because I write on guitar, but now I'm like, should I write on bass? Like, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna come easier? I should probably start doing that.
I found myself writing bass lines on the guitar that I'm like, this sounds like a good riff, but it's got some beef to it that I want played on bass. And then you can form a song around it that way.
Yeah. I to some extent, I'm sure Mark inspired me as a bassist when I was a kid as well. Like he had to have, because I learned how to play Carousel when I was a kid, and that's still one of my warm-up songs now.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of his bass lines, truthfully, are very boring. I know I even said on our little mini series about it that like I think I'm a better bassist than Mark is, but he's 100% a better songwriter and producer. That he just knows what he's doing, and he serves the song in ways that like I would make the song flourish or be a little too flashy to like really be like Blink stuff,
I could see why you'd think that, but those are just different approaches, and
right.
Works for the different genres,
Yeah. Okay, so they start the band and they start to get some traction, and as they're getting traction, they start going on tour, which is something you've been talking with the LVP recently about doing.
Yeah.
So seeing how he toured, do you still want to do it?
Van touring sounds like the grossest, most miserable thing you can do, and I need to experience it at least once.
Why? Why do you need to experience van touring?
Because I feel like once I've done that, it will check off a major life goal and a major milestone for a band, especially a band that I started, to know that we've tried everything. If we never play MSG, that's fine.
Yeah.
But as long as we took the step that if it were supposed to happen, it would. As long as we took the step to try to get there and do everything that's in our power to grow, I can be happy with that. Because I always said I wanted to tour before I'm 30, and I just turned 30, and I'm like, but I don't know if my back can take it, because I've had a bad back since I was 19. It sounds terrible. It sounds like a lot of like beef jerky and farting in the van and sleeping uncomfortably and hoping you can take a shower. I think it might be a little easier now with, GPS and credit cards and whatnot. I mean, we're all stable careered people that can do it, but for us, it's from a very different place. It's like we're just taking a vacation from our day jobs, whereas this was what they were doing to live. They went out with the hunger to make something of themselves, and I just don't want my life to pass by without having experienced something like that, even if I know that it might not turn in anything more.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to do a music video for the band, why I want to do like a big EP release show, and just milk it for all it's worth. And so van touring just seems like a great rite of passage.
That's fair. I would definitely be the guy who's like, let's get this Airbnb, because I can't. I can't.
I wouldn't fight that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I can't. I even thought about this when I was in my 20s, and granted, the bands I've been in have never really talked about touring, thankfully. But with us talking about it and being serious about it, like I'm definitely down to drive the van and rent it. Like I'm with all that, but like sleeping on the back, like on a guitar case, I'm good, bro. Like
that sounds like the worst part.
Yeah, but you're making the valid point that they were doing this to make money, whereas like we'll we can have a way to like have maybe the best of both worlds of modernity and also like, oh no, we're like trying to make it from New Jersey to the tip of Pennsylvania, you know, like in like whatever amount of hours just to play a show at some bar because why not? Like to give it all we got, you know?
Yeah,
So I think that's cool. I think that's like a cool bucket list thing for a band to do.
definitely.
So on their tour, they had to say goodbye to Scott, their first drummer.
Yeah.
Due to reasons that we kind of talked about a moment ago, where he was missing his girlfriend. I know that they had a long distance relationship. I'm pretty sure this was during the Dude Ranch tour where they were really starting to blow up. And so having the long distance relationship, it was taking a toll on them both. And he was not the same as Mark and Tom were personality wise. He was a lot quieter, which it sounds like they have a type for a drummer. But he's a lot quieter. He's not really crazy about all the jokes and whatnot. I don't, if I remember correctly, he's actually a metalhead and not a punk guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So not that he didn't fit with them, because he did, but all of these little things really kind of just push it over the edge when his alcoholism came to be too much.
Right.
And so they gave him the option to go get sober, to which he said, it's not a problem. And then he let out all of his resentment on them. And that's when that whole fire and quitting situation happened. And then they asked their buddy Travis Barker in the Aquabats to jump in. And how did Travis respond when they were like, hey, can you play drums for us?
Yeah, I'm down.
So casually. It was so chill and so cool because it becomes a part of pop music history, like in that one moment that occurred. And I think you are the one who wrote this note about Travis, right?
And then you commented the same, or that you noticed the same thing. Yeah, I'm down is basically what Thomas said when he became our official new drummer. And it really is a refreshing feeling.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by refreshing in that instance?
So for Blink, Travis also being a quiet guy works because he's got the look, you know, he's covered head to toe in tattoos. And think of a punk drummer and you think of Travis Barker, but he also knew to step back from the goofiness because that wasn't his thing the way it is for Mark and Tom.
Yeah.
But it works because he has the passion for the music that they're making. He's elevating the songs, and his type of quietness just works better. You know, they were all really locked in a way that Scott really wasn't. And having someone that talented just say, yeah, I'm down, feels refreshing, because when our first drummer, Kyle, had to leave the band, that was really hard for all of us because we didn't know what we were doing for a while. We were like, what are we going to do without a drummer? And not just any drummer, like a friend I've had since like college, like early college, and someone who demoed the first LVP songs with me and started this with me.
And he was one of the drummers that I was referring to earlier, where it's like I built like a genuine relationship and connection that like his leaving hurt me musically / professionally, and also like very personally, where I was like, oh, my good new close friend is now leaving, you know?
Yeah. But when Thomas, who we'd shared a practice space with already because he's in the band Union Fool and has filled in for shows when, you know, Kyle was kind of coming and going, we were laboring over the choice of like, oh my God, do we ask this guy who's already in another band, which is very common for drummers, but like, or like, is this going to be in a position? Like, is he going to let us down gently? Is he going to be down for it? Who knows? And so I was just kind of tiptoeing around it with my fingers together, like, hey, do you want to be the drummer? And he was just like, yeah. And I was like, wow, what a relief that it was just that simple for him, you know? And suddenly we're back on track.
Yeah. I also found it very affirming that the music we're making is, I don't want to say good enough, interesting enough. And catchy enough.
That he'd want to.
That he wants to do it because he's a really good drummer. So for a really good drummer to be like, yeah, I'm down, like, and not really have to think about it, that's awesome. That's like, all right, so our music's onto something as well too. And so now we have this awesome new musician to make it even cooler, right? So, bye, Scott. Hi, Travis. And we get to Enema of the State. What did you think about how he was writing about Enema of the State?
I loved that he highlighted the 3 singles, Adam's Song, All the Small Things, and What's My Age Again. I think in reverse order, actually.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Because these are the songs that launched them, really. You know, this album blew up. It sold way faster and way bigger than Dude Ranch did. Now they have Travis, who's the real missing piece. It all made sense, and I like when in music memoirs, when people really dive into the stories of songs, and for him to go on about Adam's Song and where that came from, and having already read the chapter it's referencing with the apple juice thing and all that, I was like, wow, this is, and to see that he was like writing it on a guitar that didn't even have all the strings on it, just like sitting down in a hotel room or something, but it came to him and it turned into something that a lot of people have told him was important to them.
Right.
That's something I strive for, you know,
Sure.
to be as emotionally vulnerable as I can, to make something that I know is honest, because that's how it's going to reach other people. However, the things that really stood out to me kind of in a funny way was, I can't believe the first song they recorded with Jerry Finn was Mutt.
That actually kind of made me a little sad, because I still hate Mutt. I still think it's a bad song.
It is. And when they did the All the Small Things music video, where they were parodying the boy bands and Britney Spears and everything, apparently the people of Italy did not get the joke, so they thought they were presenting themselves as a boy band.
It was because their label in Italy was positioning them as a boy band. Yeah.
Yeah. So when they showed up to play a metal festival with like Limp Bizkit, which like, oh God, like even before we did the Blink deep dive, if there was a band I hated more than Blink 182, it's Limp fucking Bizkit.
Maybe that might need to be our next miniseries, because I'd be down for a Limp Bizkit.
I will kill you.
It's just one of those days, you know?
Joe, this is an actual threat. I will kill you. No, but yeah, they play this festival, and metalheads in the front row are like throwing water bottles filled with pebbles at them and trying to kill them over it, because they thought they were a pop band. So I thought I would just take this moment to apologize on behalf of the Italian people, as someone who is a third generation Italian American and have absolutely no connection to my homeland, that I am sorry to Mark for the pain that has been caused to him by the Italians.
I think he'll appreciate that when he hears this, because he's going to hear this. I'm going to send him and Dan Ozzi all these episodes, and in my heart of hearts, I believe that they'll listen to it. Even if they don't listen to it actively, they'll know it. We said it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for Enema. I was very, very happy with the Take Off Your Pants and Jacket chapter, especially because it started where Mark was talking about how their next album was going to be darker. They didn't want to just be the same Blink-182. They wanted to be a little bit more mature, all these things. And as I'm reading that, I say to myself, they're skipping Take Off Your Pants and Jacket and jumping straight to Untitled, Self-Titled. And I was like, no, but he wouldn't do that. He would stick to it. So then when he started talking about Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, how the label was like, yeah, that's cool. Those are some songs he gave us. And they wanted like a hit. They wanted a single. He goes home and he writes the rock show because he's pissed off. And Tom goes and writes First Date as a spite and petty response to it. And those end up being like the catchy, typical Blink songs on the album. I still didn't realize until like the very end. I was like, wow, they actually thought Take Off Your Pants and Jacket was a legitimately darker album than Enema. And so during our episodes about it, I remember between the two of us kind of being the defender of Take Off Your Pants. Like I liked it more than Enema. And you, I think if I remember correctly,
I still had it number 4 out of 10. Yeah.
You didn't. It's not that you disliked it, but I thought you thought it was more of the same.
Here's why: the singles, because I thought with those 3 singles being First Date, The Rock Show, and Stay Together for the Kids, that is a very clear retread of the last album's 3 singles, where that last one is the deeper emotional one about someone's divorce,
Right.
someone's parents' divorce. And so, yeah, it was worth re-listening to the album, especially through the lens of knowing that those 2 songs were spiteful, like, fuck you, here's your pop hit
Right.
songs.
Did you like it better this time around?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if it would change in my rankings. I'd have to go through everything again.
Sure.
And I'm not ready. But I'd say I probably wasn't being fair enough. I think I was being held back by that that feeling that I got from those kind of typical singles. And no, I was listening a little deeper, and I was just like, yeah, this is a little darker, and it is more crude. Like,
Yeah.
the third album is really not that dirty.
No.
Like, it is, but not like this. They were like I can see now when Mark's saying that it felt like getting back to a scrappier punk roots.
Yeah.
It is. Like, it's even the attitude on it, on the songs that I really do like Anthem Part 2, there is something kind of refreshingly obscene about it.
Yeah. Yeah. This album was always one of my better liked ones of theirs, even though like I kind of just like all of them. But I was really happy that they thought it was darker, because it made me re-listen to it with the lyrics at the forefront. And they are darker lyrics, like overall. They are definitely dealing with heavier stuff, even though it is funny that it follows the same formula as Enema. In following that same formula, though, what I did really like was that Stay Together for the Kids was Tom's version of Adam's song.
Yeah.
So I really, really appreciated that Mark gave us his divorce song, and then Tom gave us his divorce song. And it's like, oh, wow, like these dudes just really get one another. Because even though it's the same song, like you can't really call it a sequel. It's the same. They're exploring the same exact themes. It was just very cool to see, like, when Mark sings about divorce and how he writes about it, it's going to come out like this, in this way, where it's personal and it's anthemic still, but it's more emo. Whereas Stay Together for the Kids is Tom being like, no, we have to have an anthem that is wall of guitars that screams at you. Should you be doing this to your children?
Yeah.
Like, what's the right move here? Like, more questioning than it is Mark exploring.
More bitter, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I loved. I thought it was, I very much so appreciated this chapter. This is probably one of my favorites of the entire book.
Yeah.
Another favorite of mine was the Boxcar Racer chapter. Really, because I always thought this era of Blink-182 was unclear to me. I didn't understand how Mark ends up on what's essentially Tom's solo album, and why they didn't just call it Blink-182. So seeing Mark's point of view about it, where he literally says it was Blink-182 minus Mark Hoppus, I was like, oh wow, like I really wasn't missing anything. Tom just kind of did Mark dirty in the way that he communicated about it. It was the same exact thing that we talked about on the original episode. It's where Tom wanted to go do some acoustic stuff. Acoustic stuff became playing with his friend. Playing with his friend meant they needed a drummer, and then they had a bassist, and Tom just wanted to do Tom stuff and like be, I guess, more of a solo band leader, which that's fair and valid and fine. But Mark was deeply hurt by this.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't help that Travis was there.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, yeah, you can just say, like, oh, I just needed a drummer. But Travis Barker is not going to be just a drummer.
Yeah.
And the fact that they still used Jerry to produce it.
Yeah.
And that it was on their label.
Yep.
All while Mark is coming from a place of, like, why wouldn't we just make Blink albums because we are Blink?
Right.
Like, he's not thinking big picture, again, where Tom is expanding. And again, I can respect it to some degree, but knowing how Mark is as an anxious person, it makes a lot more sense why he would feel shut out by this, because it just, you know, Tom says it just snowballed out of control, but like, how is Mark supposed to take it, you know?
Yeah. I think this is where Tom becomes more of the villain for me, if we're going to talk in like the dichotomy of the good guy, bad guy stuff. And truthfully, it's just because he was a poor communicator.
Yeah.
And I think if he went to Mark as a heads up before getting as big as Boxcar Racer did, which to be fair, it wasn't big at all in the long run, but to Mark, understandably so, felt really big and meaningful. I think if he was just like, dude, I want to go make this album. I'm going to be using Travis. We're working with Jerry because I like working with Jerry. We're going to be on the label because the label wants me to put it out. I hope this doesn't hurt you. How do you feel about this? If he came to Mark as a friend and was like, I'm not doing this because I don't want to be in Blink. I'm doing this because I want to be Tom.
Yeah.
And if he just said it like that, I really think we wouldn't have had all those years of problems, because this is kind of where it starts to stem from down the line, right? Like this is the breaking point for Mark. So much so that he even references it with resentment years later after this. So I feel bad because I think that closing line, the message to me was clear. Tom thought I held him back from greatness. That was gutting because Mark's such a good guy. So, and he continues to be a good guy. He's never really not a good guy. But granted, this is his memoir, so who knows if there's dirty tales waiting.
We have to keep that in mind too, because I'm sure Tom's book is coming out someday,
and I'll love to read that. You don't have to. I don't mind giving you a spark notes of it.
I'd borrow your copy. I'm not giving him money for it. But Travis has a book out. I'm probably not going to read that either.
So they have their personal rivalry, the two of them, Mark and Tom. In the very next chapter, there's a band rivalry. And me, as a 32-year-old man, felt so vindicated to learn that there was genuine tension between Green Day and Blink-182 on that Pop Disaster tour. I always talk to my sister about this, and she didn't really care. She's going to listen to this. I swear to God, she's going to listen to this, and she's going to be like, you never talked to me about that. I'm going to be like, no, I talked your ear off about it, and you just didn't like Blink-182, so you didn't really care what I was saying. But I would tell her, I was like, hey, like, Green Day, 3 guys from California. Blink-182, 3 guys from California, both writing pop punk, both kind of big, both kind of anthem-y, both quote-unquote sellouts. Why are they not buds? I was just always like very, very curious about it. And seeing that chapter with Green Day, like Green Day felt threatened by Blink-182.
Yeah. And Mark understands how they feel when they're getting upstaged by Fall Out Boy.
Yeah.
3 years later. That was kind of a beautiful reversal there, that like in the Green Day chapter, he's like, oh, I get it. That had to be hard for them because we were the real headliners, and they're sticking it to us by pushing our show later and getting us shut down and using pyro, even though that's our thing. But then he's out there, in plus 44 and having to, see this hot new young upstart bassist named Pete Wentz.
Yeah.
And have to be like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, he really had to swallow his pride. I love that. I really wish that they would tour together again too, because he takes credit for American Idiot. He like straight up says, he's like, yeah, like because of us, they went back and they were like, we have to write something better than these 3 assholes, and they make American Idiot, which was awesome. Like I love that rivalry, even if it's like not totally friendly. Like Green Day kept up like the facade of friendliness, but they weren't being friendly to them. Like I would kill for another Blink-182 and Green Day tour just so they get that going and Green Day writes American Idiot 2.
Well, because look at their legacies now, that like Green Day cemented themselves as legends because of American Idiot when they were on the way out kind of at that time. So they gave themselves a whole second wind, and Blink petered out for a long time, but then eventually, came back strong with One More Time, while Green Day continues to make shitty records again. Yeah. So like it would kind of be a repeat right now if they did it again.
I would love it. I would truly, truly love it. It'd be great. Okay. We're getting there. We're nearing the end of our professional bit of it. We got to talk about Untitled/Self-Titled. I am so happy that Mark and Travis disagree on the title, because I still don't know what it is. I know Mark says it's Untitled, so I guess like like him being more of the quote unquote band leader, that's probably what they're going to go with officially, like on streaming services and whatnot.
Yeah.
But for even the band this far out to being like, yeah, it's self-titled. No, it's untitled. And it's like, that's such a silly little thing. Why don't you just call it Blink 182? And then you don't have to worry about it at all. But I feel like Mark with like a low-key ego would be like, he's like, well, that'd be a self-titled record, right? It's untitled. Like, you know, like I feel like he would just start it over again.
Yeah.
You noted about their logo, which I didn't know about.
I mean, I feel like I'm crazy. That nobody ever talks about this. How the logo that they had commissioned for this album cover and became their band logo, the smiley face with the X's for eyes,
Yeah.
is very similar to the Nirvana smiley face,
It is.
X's for eyes, dumb logo. The only difference is the tongue hanging out and that it's like squiggly, where the Blink one is more it's more perfect but also graffiti looking, and it's got the arrows pointing and stuff. But I'm like, that Nirvana smiley face is everywhere. You see it on t-shirts all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know why more people don't talk about that. That's just always been this weird pet peeve of mine and may have contributed to why I never liked Blink 182.
I know that Travis was the one who was interested in getting that made. So I really do wonder if when he got it made, he was like, hey, we're trying to be like pop punk Nirvana. You know? Like, I don't know, because they're not the same era, but they're very, very close to it, you know? So I can see Travis like referencing that, being like, you know, kind of like the Nirvana smile. Like, and then it just maybe got too close to it. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I could see it in the realm of reason.
There's enough different about it that you know what it is. You know that it's Blink and not Nirvana. I just can't believe they did it.
Yeah.
But that's a little nitpick, because instead of coming down on them for something, I now have to apologize profusely for something. So I had this nitpick on our second episode of the Blink miniseries where I was like really annoyed by the interlude to Stockholm Syndrome, because I thought the poetry reading by the British woman sounded really, really cheesy. And I thought the whole thing was going to be a joke at first, because I thought it was so over the top, and didn't think it was written very well. I thought it was like trying too hard to sound like romantic.
Yeah.
I did not know it was written by Mark's grandfather during World War II to his grandmother, to Mark's grandmother.
Vindicated! I really thought I had mentioned that when we were on the original
No, you
one.
didn't.
If I didn't, that's my bad.
If I had known that, I wouldn't have been like, oh, this sucks.
That's funny. Okay. Oof. Because I did know that.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Also, it was read by Joanne Whalley, who's an actress and married to Val Kilmer. R.I.P. by the way. I didn't know that either. That's cool. So yeah, this crow is delicious right now.
I thought that was so cool that they had someone really, really big do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like throwaway. Like they were going all out, which they really did go all out. They took forever to finish making that record. And I don't know if Val Kilmer's wife, Joanne Whalley, was that famous then. I don't know if Val Kilmer was that famous then, but regardless, still super
Val
cool.
Kilmer was, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So you have to apologize for that one, and I appreciate your apology, but we do not have to apologize about feeling this, because we both came to this realization, and Mark confirms it and validates the hell out of it. Feeling this is what Blink-182's platonic ideal is. He straight up says, if aliens came to Earth and wanted to know what Blink-182 sounded like, he would give them feeling this on a silver platter. I felt so validated as a low-key music critic that I am, because I was like, this is what they've been building to forever. They can never not top this, but like, this is just what Blink-182 is when people think of Blink-182. And to hear the songwriter say, yep, that's exactly it. I was like, hell yeah.
This is my quintessential song. And like, I guess I disliked the song on principle because I also had that same impression of like, this is what I think of with Blink, and also I Miss You, but and all the small things, like that was my whole idea of them. And But then I listened to Feeling This Again and I was like, wait, this song is actually pretty great.
It rips,
And
and I'm gonna be honest with you. Didn't we kind of steal the intro with the drums for napping on
that was
our
Colin's
upcoming?
idea.
It was Colin's idea, but it was
and
the right
he might
idea.
have done it just to piss me off.
I
But
hope so.
little did he know, it sounds really good on that song and ours. So, well, I'm sure he knew. But he didn't think I'd think so, but I do. So it's all good.
Earlier, I mentioned that I really do feel for Tom at parts because I understand the feeling of wanting to go and do your own thing. And it's not about hurting other people or having any problems with those people, but rather just wanting to do something for yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And so at the end of this chapter for Untitled, Self-Titled, Mark is like, hell yeah, we did it. We nailed the album. We're going to put it out. Isn't that great? And Tom just goes, probably the most serious we've seen him in the book thus far. I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
And it's just because it wrecked Tom making this album, all of the time and effort that they put into it. You could see from Boxcar now with Untitled, they're slowly starting to come apart because they have differing values at some level. Mark is Blink. Mark just wants to do Blink, and he loves the Blink machine, and he's going to keep doing it. Tom, like you said, he's more ambitious, but also in that ambition, I think he wants to have fun, and I don't think he had fun making this album, despite how good it is and despite how awesome he sounds on it. So he felt very like suffering artist on this to me.
You can even see it in Tom's hair in this era because he's got the full emo fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just looks unhappy. Which, I mean, I get it. You know, it goes with the image of the album. It's darker and deeper than anything they've done before. Yeah, between Boxcar Racer and that, and also like that those came out. There was like what 3 years and 3 albums with Take Off Your Pants, Boxcar, and Untitled. Like that's a lot to do, and especially when you're setting up like your own makeshift reverb chamber in a shower, and spending 3 hours going through cables to see what sounds the best. I mean, that's a level of meticulousness that makes sense why they almost called it Our Pet Sounds, because they were going crazy doing it.
Yeah. We promised you earlier, M. Night Shyamalan.
There's not much to say. I just really wish that he ended up doing the I Miss You video.
Me too.
Because he almost did. Like they talked to him at a restaurant, because Tom talked to him at a restaurant because he's shameless about approaching celebrities. And the thing he proposed would have cost like millions of dollars, but they only had a budget of like a quarter mil. So they couldn't do it. But like now that's something I never thought I needed, but I need to see an M. Night Shyamalan Blink-182 music video.
It felt really nice, that interaction to me, because Tom was the most Tom he's ever been by just walking up to this acclaimed director. And M. Night Shyamalan was the most M. Night Shyamalan he's ever been by saying like, yeah, of course I'll do it. Give me $1 million. Like, it's just ridiculous. like, all right, man. Okay, so we're doing another time jump. We got 2 more time jumps, and then we're at our side notes. I really like the chapters on neighborhoods and dogs eating dogs, because this was another era of Blink-182 that I found questionable, which is odd because I was a genuine fan at this point, and I was mature enough to follow them and read about them and learn about them. Yeah. And Mark approaches Neighborhoods, their first reunion album, as an answer to the question, did Blink even belong in the world anymore? And it sucks because, like you said, the songs are a mess. Their communication's poor. The tour was not fun. It's just, I think people missed Blink-182, and maybe to some extent the 3 of them also missed Blink-182, but the way they did it was wrong.
Yeah, what really stood out to me about the did Blink even belong in this world anymore is he's like looking out at, I think, the VMAs, and they announced their reunion, is that the album clearly shows that they don't.
Yeah.
Because at that time, like I had said, like what was the predominant sound in rock at the time? Was it like fucking Arcade Fire? Like who knew? Like it was being phased out, and they didn't want to be a legacy act, but they'd spent so so much time away that that's all they kind of can be. And they all had different ideas of what to do, weren't communicating well. And then Travis, in his like opulence and insanity, was like having rental cars of Cadillac Escalades brought out exclusively for him to listen to the mixes, which is very expensive and stupid and whatnot. It just shows how they're all in completely different places with it. Not to mention this whole next thing about Tom and mod life.
That part upset me more than the neighborhood stuff, because neighborhoods I think I was pretty critical about, and I still am. Dogs eating dogs I was softer on, but now knowing the circumstances around it, I do remember there being the issue with like the merch and the vinyl getting sent out, but I didn't know it was because of Tom's entrepreneurial adventure mod life.
Yeah.
And so after Neighborhood sucks so much, in the book, Mark talks about how Tom approaches the two of them. He's like, hey, you know what? We got to get back to basics. Why don't we go knock some songs out? Three of us in the studio, put it out. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. That's great. And he goes, and also my new company, Mod Life, will take care of all the merch and the shipping and everything. Even so much so that immediately Mark and Travis were like, you're just using us, man.
Yep.
For your financial gain and your fan service company. And like, I thought this was scumbag Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
Which I think at some point in the book, he does mention that Tom is on pills at a certain point, likely for pain, because I know that Tom has back issues with like guitar and stuff, especially with the way he stands and holds a guitar. So I do feel for the guy. It's not him always, but there is an ego about Tom that he thinks he could walk up to M. Night Shyamalan and ask him for a video, and he thinks he could use his two best friends to make his company take off.
And this is all supposed to be on the back of their reunion being inspired by Jerry's death. And he didn't even show up to the funeral.
Yeah.
Like, that's so fucked up.
Yeah.
And I have a real hard time not hating Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
When we see all these examples of why I should.
Yeah.
When I know they make up in the end.
And I'm glad they make up, because they say they aired their grievances, and they feel they get out their resentments and whatnot. And I think Mark even says very quickly that Tom goes through a divorce too. And so all of these things, like, he gives his friend a lot of grace. You feel Mark's love for both Travis and Tom greatly throughout the book, which I think is really, really beautiful. But I am curious for a Tom DeLonge memoir, and I only hope and pray that he can be apologetic and very, very accountable for himself to his friends. I think that'd be cathartic for Mark and Travis, but also like kind of cathartic for me, because I feel like I missed out on some of the best years, or what could have been the best years of one of my favorite bands, because of some dude's selfish choices.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Travis. He was a real homie to Mark throughout all of this.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Granted, they don't owe me anything, but
yeah,
still, there's emotions there that are with it. Speaking about things that suck, I wanted to talk about I needed to talk about 9, which even Mark says, he's like, yeah, we called it 9. I don't remember why. It was just our 9th album. And it's just like, yeah, everyone got that. But okay. I personally felt so validated for hating it so much, because he gives like a kind of like a litany. It's almost like an apology tour of reasons, which I thought was fascinating. So he says, this is after California, their first album, which hit pretty well with Matt Skiba. He says that their label wants them to break out of alt rock and go into pop. Okay, makes sense why their songs sounded with a heavier coat of sheen and compression and all that stuff. He says that there were more co-writers and producers on hand. So my noting of that means more co-writers, more producers equals less Blink.
Yeah.
Because you can't have 110% of something. So at some point, the co-writers are just going to take over what is more authentic Blink. So, which I felt like at some points with some of that awful writing, like King of the Weekend.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That was on California, and that's what really confused me, because there's almost nothing memorable on 9.
I'm glad you said that, yeah.
What's weird to me is that, in the book, Mark sounds kind of stoked about California, even
Yeah.
to this day. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but that one sucked too. He does say, Skiba had the very unenviable position of
Yes.
of replacing Tom and needing to be himself, but not too different, but not try to copy Tom.
Yeah.
And it's impossible. And that Skiba just did it all with grace. He even took, being kicked back out for Tom again,
Right.
with grace. And I don't know, it just made me like Matt Skiba even more.
Yeah. Again, I have to do an Alkaline Trio deep dive.
Yeah.
So kind of similar to what you said about them struggling with the VMAs for neighborhoods. Mark notes that it's hard to be on the cover of a magazine when there are no magazines left for 9. I felt super validated being a musician, not knowing what the hell to do to promote myself and my band. And they didn't know how to do it. And they had a whole team and a whole label behind them because they were used to TRL. They were used to all these things that didn't exist anymore. And it's sad, but that's the state of everything. And it's like, that hasn't really changed, I don't think.
No. When we were doing the deep dive, I was watching a bunch of Blink-182 music videos. And one of the videos I came across was during the 9 era where Mark and Travis are on, I don't think it's called this anymore. It used to be the Fine Brothers on YouTube. They did those like kids react, teens react videos. It was a whole era of YouTube where they popularized the react thing. And now I think the channel's literally just called React. And they did a video that was Blink-182 reacts to kids react to Blink-182.
Yeah.
So they had previously done a kids react to Blink-182 video, and then they got on and reacted to that. And I was like, this is cute. Like, it's cool that they are opening themselves up to kids and they're being like interested to see what new kids think now that like these are the kids that their fans had.
Yeah.
So it's a next generation of Blink fans and stuff, and like seeing how it works for a lot of kids because there is something so primal and juvenile in a way kids can appreciate, but that resonates through generations, I'd say. But knowing that channel, that Fine Brothers channel, and knowing like, oh man, this is what they had to do to try and drum a pipe for their second album without Tom.
Yep. It's kind of lowering themselves. It's beneath them.
Yeah, because they don't know where they stand anymore. Like it was just sad.
It was sad. Yeah. It was very, very sad.
Also, it was just Mark and Travis. Like Tom is in all of those videos that the kids are reacting to. And they just have to kind of talk about Tom like he's just not around anymore. Yeah. But then Skiba's not even there to like replace him, which like, I don't know, good for Skiba that he's not gonna be like, no, I'm not going on the fucking Fine Brothers channel. I don't know. The whole thing was weird. It made it even more apparent how empty that whole era was.
Yes. Which now finally getting to our side notes, I'm happy that One More Time came. Granted, after Mark's cancer and beating it and whatnot, I'm glad that they came back together. But that the depths of 9 make the heights of One More Time all the higher for me.
Me too.
Especially, which I know we agreed on, but especially after reading the book too. Because the book ends with their Coach Hell show. So it doesn't get to One More Time. It just talks about them like starting to kind of maybe get back to writing and in the studio and whatnot. But now knowing that One More Time comes and how triumphant a return it is, especially opening with Anthem Part 3. I loved Anthem Part 3 to begin with, but I listened to One More Time this morning after finishing the book last night. And I was like, wow, Anthem Part 3 is like high key, kind of an epilogue to the memoir.
Yeah.
They're talking about very personal things. Mark's whole verse on it, which is just a total vibe shift from Tom's, showing how they're like truly just melding all of their styles together on this album. Mark's verse is really gutting and really heavy and really hard, and it's awesome. And so in the way that like 9 truly sucks because too many people are in the room, it's watered down Blink, they don't know what they're doing. One More Time comes out and it's like every choice is purposeful. Everything feels inspired. They are so comfortable with themselves as both people and bandmates that they can incorporate everything that each one of them loves into an album, and it becomes the legitimate statement for the three of them as both musicians, as friends, and also as the unit Blink 182.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels incredible, especially knowing now on May 29th that a couple maybe days or weeks ago, it came out that they're going to be recording a new album this summer.
I think Mark even said that at the book event. He was like, "Oh, by the way, we're working on new Blink music," and everyone's like, "Yeah,
yeah," which is awesome because now everyone's like, "Hell yeah!" Like Blink Mania or whatever is back, and they made it happen because like this sounds really really cheesy. They made it happen through their friendship, you know?
Yeah,
like
Power
them
of
being friends again,
dude.
right? Which I think is dope. I think
Yeah.
it's awesome.
One of my big takeaways as a side note was I appreciate Mark avoiding using the F slur when he's talking about being called it in grade school. He just refers to it as a homophobic slur. And I don't know if it's like I think a lot of aging and or I don't give a fuck rock stars would just say it anyway. But he or Dan Ozzi or the editor or whoever made the conscious choice not to say the actual word, and that's cool.
I could see that being any of them, like truly any
Yeah.
of them, because it does show their values very clearly.
Yeah. But that was just a little side thing. I also I like all the pictures because I like Blink 182 and I can't read.
That should have gone on the back of the book. I'm not gonna lie. Mark would have loved that.
No. Actually, what he does say on the back of the book is cool because he says, "Hi, I'm Mark. This is a book about my favorite band, Blink 182."
And it's awesome because it's just a picture of him.
Yeah,
it's not even the band.
But I also think that's really sweet, and I really share that with him. That I could probably say the LVP is my favorite band because I listen to our stuff a lot, like it kind of an embarrassingly high amount. But I'm just really proud of what we've made, and I know that we're putting our all into it and our influences. So it's like every artist is just an amalgam of the things that they are inspired by. And so I get to put that out there and hear it back at me. Like I would never say I'm as good as any of these people. I wouldn't say like, oh, when I hear my screams, I think I'm hearing Missy DeBeese
Yeah.
from Mannequin Pussy because I'm as good as Missy DeBeese. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I hear how she inspired me in what I put out, or Kurt Cobain or Bruce Springsteen. So I love that that's the approach that he had with this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was joking about the pictures thing, but I do like that the pictures add a lot to the book. It like grounds it and makes it feel more like you're really going through the story by seeing a picture from each of these times as he's writing about them.
Yeah.
And between that and the short chapters, it's just a breeze to read. To say nothing of the fact that Mark is funny and compelling and Dan Ozzi is a great writer and editor.
Yeah.
You know, I felt the same way about his book with Laura Jane Grace.
Yep.
That, you know, she was already keeping a journal for a lot of this. And so it was very natural. And she's known to be a great writer. So writing a book came naturally to her. And Dan Ozzi, I think, is so good at not letting you know he's there. His writing never gets in the way of the voice of who the book is really by. He's just making sure it all comes through in a cohesive way.
I would love to talk to him about this book, especially because I thought there were moments where I was like, oh, I think Dan was a part of this writing decision or this choice. Just because it felt like, especially at the show, seeing how the two of them interacted, it seemed like they were playing to both of their strengths and also just showing how they work together. Mark said at the show that he likes to pace around and talk. And so this book felt like he was pacing around and talking, which is awesome. But there were parts during the show where Dan was like, all right, Mark, get back on track. And Mark needed it. And there's parts in the books where it's like he starts to hit a tangent and he goes a little too far. Like, and I see like a parentheses insertion and I'm like, Dan told him to put that in parentheses. Like, it doesn't need to be there. Or the way there's a whole chapter that is super, super humorous. And then it ends on a, oh, yeah, Boxcar Racer is just Blink-182 minus Mark Hoppus. And it's like, oh, okay, Dan's there telling him, like, you got to put a gut punch here. Like, he's like kind of like directing him to some level, because this book's long. Like, I don't know how much Ozzi, like, quote unquote, wrote of it, because I agree. I think he's really, really good at being an invisible partner, but he's he's integral to this book along with Tranny. And you could see it because in his own book, Sellout, dude knows what he's doing when it comes to writing. So if he knows what he's doing with his own writing, I love that he's here as this like kind of low-key director for all of my musical heroes to get out what they really got to get out. It's awesome. It's really, really awesome.
So cool. And I love that I had listened to Sellout again, or the Blink chapter of Sellout, while we did the deep dive. So I was remembering a lot of these same stories from Sellout in the Mark book. And I think there was some overlap too between Sellout and Tranny, which, sorry if I can't say that, but actually Mark has a funny moment like that in the book where he's like, I listen to all my parents' records, like the Beatles and Michael Jackson. I can say that, right?
Yeah.
And all their comedy records by like Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby. I can say that, right?
Yeah.
Because when you said the parentheses thing, it made me think of that too.
Do you have any final thoughts about Fahrenheit 182?
This was so refreshing after 6 episodes of Bruce. When I first read it, I was just like, I wonder if every book that I would read by an artist that I might be met on would make me like them more.
Yeah.
Because I was always curious about Against Me, but it wasn't until I read Tranny that I was like really into them, because Laura Jane Grace was compelling and it made me want to dig deeper into her music. But that was also a Dan Ozzi book.
Yeah.
That was entertaining in its own right and had interesting things. So I don't know. If I read a book by Bono, I would probably not like U2 anymore. like, no, that's not going to work. So no, I think the book just stands well on its own, and it works for fans, middle of the road, and haters alike. Like anyone can get into this, I think. And it's so fast because the chapters are short. There's lots of pictures. It's funny. It's heartbreaking at times when he talks about his cancer and things like that. But then I see him referencing like that when he discovered the cancerous lump in his shoulder, he was playing Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I like Ghost of Tsushima.
He's just a normal dude like me.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of music at all, or crude humor, or just any kind of historical capturing of the last 30 years, I think this book is great and you should check it out.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Thank you for listening. We really, really appreciate it. We will be back next week with our 20th episode,
20,
which is going to be a super, super special one that not even Steve knows what it's about yet, but he's going to agree to it the minute we get off the air.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Filler. If you like what you heard, please rate and review this episode to help others find it. For more recommendations and explorations of media we love, go to afterschoolspecial.xyz. Follow Filler on Blue Sky and email us at fillerpod@gmail.com. See you next time.